There is a shadow cast over the young genre of roguelike deck builders. Slay the Spire, with its monolithic popularity and success, commands the standard against which all games of that ilk are judged against. Massive in scope and with near endless possibilities, its popularity has defined the growth of the genre. This is great as an entry point into roguelike deck builders for those new to the genre, but it also sets expectations at a point where deviation to the formula or creative exploration might not be received all too well. If you don't play a lot of roguelike deck builders, it can be off-putting when encountering something altogether different. But there are loads of cool experiences to be found that explore the format in interesting ways, from Monster Train to Roguebook to Griftlands to fights in tight spaces. And for our purposes here, I would definitely place Wildfrost on that list. Wildfrost was made by Deadpan Games and Gazetteer. The player must build up a powerful deck of allies and items to free the world from the eternal winter caused by a frozen sun. Crucial to each battle in Wildfrost are the 2 lanes where allies can be summoned. Each lane has 3 slots and an opposing lane for enemies to queue up. Each ally and enemy has a countdown timer that shows how many rounds until it will activate, where it will attack and trigger any special abilities. Playing one card constitutes a round, whether that's in summoning an ally to the field or playing an item onto your allies or enemies. What this creates is several intricately laid out clocks that can be rearranged, boosted or halted at any moment. Each battle is a constantly shifting time signature where players anticipate the rhythm of violence to be visited upon their characters. The very concept of this would be exciting all by itself, but Wildfrost adds attributes we might come to expect from a deck builder. Characters don't just have health and damage, they could have poison attacks which take damage over time, shell which builds up block on characters, snow which halts the countdown timer of characters, burn which will explode when it reaches the health threshold of the character, or ink which prevents characters from using their effects. And that list is probably only half of the effects that can be encountered throughout the game. There are so many cards that layer on top of the simple application of the effects that the player can build what feel like outrageously broken decks. Those familiar with the game may feel a trickle of excitement at that prospect. There are also charms, which can be attached to any card. These give permanent buffs to cards and can be stacked so you can have one completely broken monster of a card visited upon your enemies. The only issue with charms is the largely random nature of what you're going to get. You might get some that are completely useless for your build or just straight up debuffs, and that feels like a waste of money. With 12 ticking timepieces on the field, all with different effects to keep track of, getting a read of the battlefield can take a lot of time and experience playing the game. There have been countless times when a run of mine ended because I've overlooked how the round will play out and my leader gets defeated. There's no shorthand way to view this, and it can come out of nowhere, or it can just be a careless mistake. This brings some frustration to the game where you might have a great deck built up, but something trivial destroys it. So there are feedback issues which are a result of compounding effects and the sheer number of characters on screen. It feels like there almost needs to be a checkmate functionality to signal to players in that messy moment when they are facing doom. Whilst the amount of effects may appear dizzying in scale, they are compartmentalized somewhat by the different deck types that the player can start a run with. With 3 different deck types, you have one which can diverge into health bonuses, poison or block, another focuses on summoning monsters only to sacrifice them for the greater good, and the last has its own economy of recycling cards to boost the effects of others. Each of these taps into a variety of player styles well trodden in deck builders. Where each run differs is in the choice at the start, where the player can choose a leader from one of the 3 types. Each leader will have randomized attributes and effects. This functions similarly to the boost you might get in Hades for selecting a different weapon from the previous one. Whilst I favour the summoning deck in particular, the leader bonuses I get from a different deck type might tempt me into trying another for a run. Wildfrost encourages replayability and variety in other ways too. The hub town has different buildings where you can complete challenges to unlock new cards and charms. It's not a million miles away from replaying the same type of deck over and over to unlock new cards, but it does advance that type of design where variety of play is encouraged over the same strategy again and again. One of the best aspects of Wildfrost is how contained it is. The developers have created something which in every way respects the need for a roguelike run to fall on the short side. The nature of permadeath means the more time spent in a run, the more attached you are to your deck. If you fall before the finish line and you're staring down the barrel of a long build-up time, it can be off-putting. For example, Griftlands has a focus on storytelling and quests, all of which add to the amount of time spent on a run. Some runs in Griftlands can take upwards of 3 or 4 hours, and despite how good that game is, the idea of putting that much time into a roguelike run only to fail is disincentivizing. A run in Wildfrost can be done in half an hour, or if you're particularly rubbish like me, 10 minutes when you fall at the first boss. It's a roguelike sweet spot where you can go from start to finish in well under 45 minutes because you can be propelled straight back into the fray in no time at all. Whilst this is good for replayability, it can be a double-edged sword for those who like to have more time to build their decks. In between battles, the player has a choice of 2 paths where you can get new cards, charms, or cut down your deck size. At times it can feel like you're not getting much out of these points, especially if the random drops don't suit your build. This is a trade-off in all deck builders though. For me, Wildfrost gets this right because everything in the game is scaled towards a fast 30-minute run. You can still have decks that feel broken and overpowered, and the game will still be tightly balanced in a petite framework. All of this to not even mention half of what makes Wildfrost a really well-rounded experience. From the visuals to the sound design, to one of the most interesting mechanical conceits in future runs having you face off against the deck that you last won the game with. Wildfrost is a great addition to the genre, and definitely worth your time. Thanks so much for watching. If you'd like to watch any more of my videos, you can click on the links in the descriptions. Otherwise, I'll have more videos coming out soon, so you can click subscribe to be notified.